The impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires, and there's a host of damned souls at Paranormal.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead. And what of the true god? He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Everybody, welcome to the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Irene and Mark, and with me tonight is as usual, my co-host, Marky Johnson.
Hello, as usual.
Well, you're always there, aren't you, Mark?
Yeah, I am. I think I'm here more than you are. And you're the host of the show.
Yeah, I know, but you've got to be, because you've got to correct all my mess-ups.
That's true. I'm a co-host, producer, flunky. Do what I'm told.
General T-boy.
Yes, do what I'm told.
Oh! I'm just sitting watching. You would love this, Mark. You would love this. 2 riders on horses just riding past my front gates.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're really beautiful.
Were they, chasing a bunch of beagles?
No. It's not a fox hunt, darling.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just 2 riders, and it's unusual to see them this time of the night coming through the village. But it means it's summer, sweetie. And you know something else?
What's that?
We had sunshine today.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, you've just gotten your allotment of sunshine for the year.
That's it.
Now you have to wait a whole nother year to get another sunny day.
Yeah, and it's on with a fake tan tomorrow.
Yeah, tell everybody you sat out, you laid out for the one day to get your tan.
Yeah, and look how brown I got.
Yeah.
Do you know, I wore fake tan to Italy last year. Now, I'm not a big fake tan fanatic. I'm not. I started doing it for the first time last year. And I thought to myself, I am not going to be that white pebble on the beach. I am not going to. Because you know how bronzed and sun-kissed they all are on the Italian beaches. Mm-hmm. All looking absolutely fantastic. So I put on the fake tan, didn't I? Went out there wearing white. I wore white. Okay. When I got to the apartment... I spent a lot of time in the village having drinks with friends and the piazza and one thing or another, and but then I went back to the apartment to change for the evening. When I took my clothes off, I'm not kidding you, Mark, it looked all brown in the wrong places. These white trousers were literally all brown. You can imagine what it looked like.
I'm trying to use brain bleach to get that image out of my head right now.
Yeah, so it was straight in the shower, scrubbing it all off,
That's why I don't bother. I'll just, I'm lily white no matter what. So I've got that northern ginger thing going on.
Yes, you have, haven't you?
Yes. Well,
yeah.
I don't tan. I burn between the freckles.
But you'd have to have plenty of sunblock. You really would have to have plenty of sunblock because you will burn.
Yeah, but not in England. You only get one sunny day a year.
Yeah, but it's... Well, yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't argue with me on that one, could you?
No, I can, because we had 2 weeks last year.
Oh, wow. A whole 2 weeks.
Wall-to-wall sunshine. And talking of walls, people, I haven't got one.
The Drafucking wall is still not up, huh?
The Drafucking wall is not doing anything. And the weather's been quite good. All right, it's not. We've had sunshine. We've had clear days. We've only had recently, in the last couple of weeks, 1 day of rain. That Drafucking wall could have been up, but that Drafucking wall is not up. In fact, there's not even been a Drafucking builder out there.
And just so people know, we're not cussing. We're saying Drafok is the name of the village. So it's the Drafalking Wall, as we refer to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Anyway, it's not there. So that's it. Right. What else was it I wanted to talk to you all about? Oh, hello, Brian. Paul O'Brien. Hiya.
Yep.
Well,
one of our biggest fans. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. Right. What else was there? I wanted to talk to you about something. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Before you say your bit, Mark, thanks to everybody that's given us 5 stars on Facebook. We're grateful for that. Got more today. And also your lovely comments and one thing or another. Keep it up. We're going to keep bringing you new shows more and more. In fact, we've got quite a few coming off in the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be good. Right, go on, Mark. You can talk now.
I can? Really?
Yeah.
No, we definitely have a couple of new shows coming up. We got some surprises in store, so stay tuned for further announcements. But, we also wanted to mention we've been talking about the book that we've been putting together. We've been asking people for their strange encounters, their stories of anything unusual that they've experienced. And, we've gotten a lot of great responses. We want to thank everybody for submitting those. You know what? We are coming up on the deadline soon. We are going to have the end of June. June 30th will be the cutoff date for us accepting any new stories for the upcoming book. So if you go out to our website at ParanormalUKRadioNetwork.com. Click on the link for the Strange Encounters, submit your stories, and submit your strange encounter story. Anything paranormal, whether it be a UFO sighting, dealing with a cryptid, an encounter with a ghost, a scary experience in your life. We'll even deal with things of dreams and synchronicity and any kind of high strangeness. Lots of different categories that could fit into this book. And we ask you that when you submit your stories, provide as much detail as possible. And these best stories that we get, we will put into the book, and that book is going to come out in the fall. So we do have to put a cutoff date on June 30th, the end of June. Get your submissions in, and your story could appear in our book coming out in the fall. We've been saying the name Strange Encounters, but that's more of description. We're not sure exactly what it's going to be called just yet. We'll see how many more stories we get, see what kind of flair, a little bit of inspiration for the title. And you know what? If you have an experience and you actually have pictures and photos that go with it, send us your photos as well. We will be including photographs in this book. So that's June 30th is the cutoff. Go to ParanormalUKRadioNetwork.com and submit us your stories. How's that?
That's good.
I thought so.
Looking forward to that one.
Yeah. I actually sounded like a professional there.
You certainly did that. Boyle.
Hey, so when is this royal wedding taking place?
Oh, we thought, something? I thought it was Friday, which meant that it would be a holiday for everybody in the country. It turns out they done us on that one. It's Saturday.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's Saturday, so no free day off, anybody. I'm sorry. Well,
what's the point in having a royal wedding if you can't get a free day off of work?
Well, that's it. But anyway, it's on Saturday.
Oh,
yeah. And the country's bubbling, I suppose.
This will be the first time we get
I'll be doing. I'll more than likely be sitting in the garden with a Prosecco or something like that, getting pie-eyed.
Now, I do believe this is the first time we're getting an American princess.
Yes.
And does she have to give up her citizenship?
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yes, I believe so. She could be dual. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I should imagine so.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. I wonder how long she'd have to wait for a passport.
Yeah. Well, there's money floating around all around there, so, I'm sure that will be taken care of.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people in this country that are having private parties to celebrate in their homes. No one's invited me, but it doesn't matter. I should just have my Prosecco out in the garden, like I said, and sulk. But I hope they all have a great time. All enjoy yourselves. Get pie-eyed. Do whatever you're going to do. Okay, but be safe.
And I want to make one final comment on the things that have been going on over at the Dark Matter Radio Digital Network with our friend...
Oh, I forgot about that.
Keith Rowland, who runs the network. You know, for anybody who listens to Paranormal Radio, you're probably all aware by now that Art Bell passed away a few weeks ago. Heather Wade, who had taken over Midnight in the Desert for Art for the last couple of years, basically, you know, we won't get into what really happened other than to say that she didn't want to come back to work. She was let go because she felt she wasn't ready, and Keith has moved on with the show. And I want to congratulate Dave Schrader. Dave is a friend of mine. Dave had hosted the very successful Darkness Radio, or Darkness on the Edge of Town, which aired locally in Minneapolis for many years, and then he had the Darkness podcast going for a while, but now he's hosting Midnight in the Desert over in the Dark Matter Digital, and we air on Monday nights over there. They play our weekly repeats from the week before, and so we're the lead-in show. So, Dave, I wanted to congratulate you and wish you good luck, and I think you're an excellent choice to take over that show.
I do as well. And he's got a really, really sexy voice.
Yeah, until you see his picture. Oh, to the rim shot.
I've got a picture of him. You know, I've got a picture of him holding in one of our books.
I got a picture of him with his head on my shoulder looking at me adoringly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Worrying, very worrying.
Very strange, very worrying.
Yeah.
Well,
there is a picture of him holding one of our books, Mark.
Yes,
Demon's
there is.
Dwell, I think it is.
Yep.
Is it Demon's Dwell? Either way, whether it's Demon's Dwell or the Psychic Spy, I'm not sure, but he's looking absolutely shocked. So it was either terror or too much sex in the Psychic Spy. I don't know.
Well, you know, speaking of radio shows, why don't you introduce our guest?
Oh, you can do that tonight.
Oh, you're going to leave that to me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a part of my co-host duties. All right. Well, I want to introduce our guest for tonight, who has also hosted or co-hosted his own radio show, the Paranormal Underground Radio. Sorry, I have rented lips tonight. He's also an author, and he's written one book so far, The Geek's Guide to the Strange and Unusual, Poltergeists, Ghosts, and Demons. And there's another book on the way, so we want to welcome Rick Hale to the program. How are you tonight, Rick?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Hiya, Rick. Before we start, Rick, can I just ask Mark a question?
Sure.
Mark, what the hell is rented lips?
Yeah, what does that even mean?
You know what? That was an old Robin Williams thing where he screwed up once on stage on one of his albums. He screwed up and he goes, "Oh, sorry, rented lips." So I don't know. I just picked that up and ran with it.
Okay.
They're rented,
anyway,
so you know I have no responsibility for what I say.
All right.
Okay.
Well, once again, welcome, Rick.
Thank you so much for having me. And you know, and I would like to say also, you know, congratulations to Dave Schrader. I was a huge fan of Darkness, of his previous show. I thought it was great. I used to listen to it, you know, when I would go for long walks. It was, you know, I would say one of the best paranormal related radio shows I've ever heard. So congratulations to him.
I agree. You know,
he's a brilliant host.
He's a great host. He's one of the best ones out there, and I've heard many of them, of the better ones out there. I've heard plenty of the bad ones out there too. But you know, Dave has always been a real professional, and how he handles his shows, how he handles his guests, and he has that charisma to keep it going. And you know, so he's he's also co-hosted or guest hosted over on Coast to Coast on a number of occasions too. So even though that it wasn't working directly with Art Bell, he's going to pick up Art's spirit in terms of the show and keep it going over there. So yeah, I wish him a lot of luck.
Very good.
But that means you people still have to listen to our show too. You know.
Yes.
You listen to our
do
show
that.
first. Midnight in the Desert. You catch when you can. Okay. No. Okay.
Yeah. Do that, people. Please do that.
So, Rick, let's talk about the fact that you've been working in the paranormal for over 20 plus years. How did you get involved?
It's actually, well, I had my introduction to this, to the paranormal when in 1982, I was 8 years old. And I witnessed and interacted with the spirit that was inhabiting my grandparents' apartment in Franklin Park, Illinois, which is just west of Chicago on the northwest side. And, just seeing her, hearing her voice, and it really set my life on this path of discovery. So pretty much from like 1982 to 1991 were the years that I read anything and everything that I, possibly could on what it is that I had witnessed and what does it mean and what is life, what is death, what is afterlife, more or less. And 1991 was the summer of 1991. I believe I was a senior in high school. I was a 17-year-old kid. That was my first investigation, which happened quite by accident.
So you grew up in an apartment that actually had paranormal activity. You don't hear about apartments as much as houses.
My grandparents. Right. It was my grandparents' home. And Chicago apartments, especially in the old buildings, they're a little bit different. You have an upstairs, usually where the person that owns the building lives, and their apartment really isn't that big. But you have downstairs where my grandparents lived. Now, this was all one house at one time before it was turned into an downstairs apartment where my grandparents lived. And the people that owned the building, Mr. and Mrs. McNett, they before they turned it into apartments, and it was the spirit of Mrs. McNett that I had witnessed and interacted with.
So, what types of, in what ways were you interacting with these types of spirits? Was it direct speaking with, communication, or how were they appearing to you?
Okay, I'll explain to you in greater detail of what happened so you can get a better idea of what it is that I had experienced. My cousin and I, Chris, we had just fallen asleep in the front room, and in these old Chicago buildings, and then you have this long hallway, which typically doesn't have any lights in it. So the nearest place to have a light on is either in the bathroom that is right in the middle. It was on the right hand side of the hallway and goes into the kitchen. Well, my grandmother always left the light in the bathroom on so us kids are able to see. And I got up to use the bathroom, and I know I wasn't dreaming because I was literally on the verge of peeing my pants. And I walk in the bathroom, and all of a sudden I see the light flick off. Now I'm very conscious to leave this light on and make sure it doesn't go off. So I'm standing there in this hallway in complete darkness, and all of a sudden I see somebody come out of the bathroom. So I'm standing there in the dark, and suddenly I see this person walk out of the bathroom. I thought it was my grandmother, but I could tell that it was a woman, which is, why I thought it was my grandmother, and she was the only woman in the house that night. But my grandmother was a very short woman. She was Native American, so she was maybe about 4'9" tall. This was a tall woman, not so much, 6 feet tall or anything like that, but about 5'8", 5'9". So I'm like looking up at this woman, and I'm wondering, who in the heck is this lady that is in the house? So she turns, and she looks down at me, and she touches my face and she says with this Irish accent, and I'm not even going to attempt to make an Irish accent. So, but she looks down, touches my face and says, "My, what a fine young lad."
Whoa, wait. So this woman who walks out of the bathroom not only sees and acknowledges you, but physically touches you.
Yes, and now it's interesting to note when she touched me, it didn't feel like finger, and it's weird. It's like I've told this story so many times, and I even write about it in my next book, and it still gives me chills all over my body. And we're going on 38 years later. So anyways, her fingers feel like static electricity. You know how like when you put a balloon on you after you rub it on your hair,
right?
And you touch it and it feels like that prickly sensation. Mm-hmm. So that's what it feels like. So she says to me, she says, "My, what a fine young lad." And then she just smiles at me. And then she turns and she walks towards the kitchen. And I actually watch her as if she is like melting away into the darkness.
Do you know, this sounds like a time slip, Mark.
Well, that's what I was
like what I've had.
That's what I was going to say. It's this doesn't feel like a ghost experience. Not exactly anyway. Now
here's the interesting thing, though. And believe me, I know about time slips. I've read about them quite a bit, but I'm not the only person that had ever seen Mrs. McNett. My grandmother had seen her on numerous occasions, and my cousins, although they had never seen her, they had experienced her in different ways. For example, you would hear footsteps, or somebody would felt as if they would touch you. My cousin Vicky, who actually lives in Alabama, when she was a little girl visiting, she was standing in the kitchen, and you couldn't get too close to the stove when it was on because it was very old and it would get very hot and it would burn you. So she gets too close. All of a sudden, she feels somebody grab her shoulder and whisper in her ear, "Now, don't get too close to that because you may burn yourself."
Wow.
In the same type of Irish accented voice?
Exactly. So everybody knew that Mrs. McNett, he was an American, she was from Ireland.
So she did exist in that apartment at some point.
Exactly. She
was an old tenant.
Yeah. No, well, she was the owner of the place.
She was.
Before she had passed away. She died maybe 10 or 15 years earlier, I want to say, before that incident.
That's remarkable contact, though, isn't it?
It is,
yeah.
which is telling something is telling me that this isn't quite what we think it is. I don't know. I'm reluctant. And Rick, just it's not putting anything down or in any way of what your experience were or what your opinions are of it. The only thing is that we've been doing a lot of research lately into re-examining a lot of paranormal phenomena because I think we jump to conclusions too much on what we think we're dealing with because people go off of what they've been taught and told about ghosts and spirits, and somebody who's still hasn't crossed over and you're dealing with the ghost. And between our own personal experiences, a lot of the experiences Irene's had over the years, we started looking into other theories, and a lot of it deals with a type of time slip or even sometimes parallel realities. But in this case...
Mark. So, she's now passed away, right? She's passed away, but so it's like a time slip back into, or a time slip over to another dimension. But while she was alive, this was all happening to her as well. Sugar.
What do you mean?
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
What do you mean this was happening to her?
This happened before. It happened before to her in her It's crossing over these dimensions.
So you,
I can't explain it. I know it, but I can't
are you
explain
saying,
it
Irene,
into
that
English words?
Are you saying, Irene, that she had her own paranormal experiences in that apartment?
Yeah, the same ones as them. The same paranormal experiences in her time. It just keeps on flipping. Not like a residual energy, nothing like that, but it's flipping of time. But do you understand what I mean? My hands are going like mad here. I know what I'm talking about, and I can see it all as clear as can be. If this movie would be great.
I know exactly what you're saying, and I know exactly what Mark is saying, but experiencing it was an entirely different, thing. I mean, you guys could be right. I'm not going to doubt that, and I think that that's an amazing theory, and I think that we do need to explore other theories and the way that we investigate and incorporate those theories. But when you're actually there and you experience it, it really did seem as if that this was an intelligence that was interacting with me.
Oh, no. And we actually, part of what we think when we talk about these time slips is it's definitely a conscious entity. It's definitely something that definitely knows you're there, interacts with it. I mean, we mentioned this many times on the show of Irene's own experience of running into a woman who reacted to her in the same way. They both were shocked at seeing each other. So there is that conscious, it's not like a residual haunting that just plays out like a time loop. There is an interaction. And sometimes when we look at these types of cases, we have to take a step back and think, okay, trying to look at the evidence, look at what we've experienced, how does it feel, the vibrations you feel at that time, moment in time, to determine whether or not you're dealing with a disembodied spirit or entity, or you're dealing with a type of time slip where 2 points in time merge, and those people in that time could interact. Now, they may still even look, not solid. You can see through them or whatnot, but there's still that consciousness of two, instead of a ghost or seeing a ghost or a spirit, two living people briefly interact whatever those right conditions may be.
Well, it's like the Castle of Versailles time slip with Moberly and Jourdain, two English school teachers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they were able to interact with personalities that they believed was, the King of France and, Marie Antoinette. So
didn't they speak to a gardener or something, didn't they?
Right. They spoke to a gardener, and like I said, I totally know where you're going with it, and I think it's a great theory, but to actually be there and experience it, I felt as if I was dealing with an actual to my 8-year-old mind, I felt as if I was dealing with an actual person.
Yeah.
Now, when you saw her walk out of the bathroom, did she appear solid? Did she seem translucent? I mean, how did she? Was there anything about her appearance that, in hindsight, thinking about it, looked off for the location or the lighting or anything?
None. She was solid. She looked like a person until she turned and walked towards the kitchen and just sort of melted away. That's the best way that I could possibly explain it.
Yikes. That's really impressive.
No, I've had those I've had the solid ones as well, Mark. I've told you about them.
Yeah.
I've had them out in the high street.
Yeah.
The old man that was walking towards me, and I thought, he doesn't look too well,
or your travel passenger to the airport.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's
It is food for thought. Food for thought, I tell you. When you've had these experiences, it goes through your mind for days and days and days and days.
Right.
You are analysing every little bit of it. But
And
this,
I still do.
Yeah.
Decades later, I still think about it. I can still see her. I know that I had a very real experience that really. I can't say that it changed the way I was thinking, because I was 8 years old. So how is it that, it's just, if anything, it's set me on a path of trying
discovery.
to find out why and what exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it certainly sounds like it started you, considering how many years that you've been exploring the paranormal. I mean, what are some of the other personal experiences that you've had?
Well, my very first investigation, like I said, from 1982 to about 1991 was all reading. I read anything that I could possibly get my hands on, and believe me, it's not like back then. It's not like it is today. You would go. It's not like today where you go to the bookstore, you go to the library, and you find dozens, even hundreds of books on the subject of ghosts. Back then, you were lucky if you found 5. And I'm talking about, I had, where my parents were divorced. My dad lived in Chicago. My mom lived in Round Lake Beach, Illinois. So I had 2 different libraries that I could go to. And I was lucky if I could scrounge up 5 books. But, things came out and, over the years, and I was able to read a little bit more. But 1991 was when I had my very first investigation. And like I said, it was quite by accident. I got a call from a friend of mine. She was involved with this ministry that was helping teenagers escape from, bad situations, being involved in, cults and stuff like that. And now keep in mind, I'm not a very religious person, so I don't, accept the religious aspects of it. And she had this girl come to live with her. She was only a year younger than me. She was 16 at the time. And she made the wild claim to my friend, her name was Denise, that when she would go to bed at night, these large black masses would suddenly appear and torment her while she was sleeping. So I'm thinking, okay, my friend called me up. She's like, I know you got an interest in this kind of stuff. Why don't you just come on over for the night and you can observe and see if you can, find anything that's going on. So I accepted. And it was a Saturday night. I was hanging with my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, look, I got to go and do this, to help out a friend of mine. So I get there and I talk to the girl, and it turns out the girl was involved in this occult group that practiced not Satanism, but kind of like sex magic. I know it just sounds so like bizarre to some people.
More like tantric types of. I know.
I don't even know if it was tantric. It was definitely something of a more darker variety than that. And she was engaged. She had gotten engaged to the leader of this group, and allegedly this guy was like a powerful magician or whatever. And he got wind that she was leaving, but he didn't know where she was going to. So he put this curse on her. Again, I know this sounds fantastic, but puts this curse on her, and that she's going to have these beings follow her around. So anyways, she comes into Round Lake Beach, and she's staying with my friend, and I go over there, and she tells me this whole big story about this stuff that's with her. So I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. Even at 17 years old, I wasn't ready to believe all this kind of stuff just yet. So she fell asleep, and I stayed up. I walked around the house, made sure that everything was closed. Now, keep in mind, this is September in northern Illinois, and this house was a mobile home. They didn't have any air conditioning, so it was kind of hot and stuffy in the house. So I'm sitting in this chair, writing down all the stuff that it is that that I had talked to this girl about, and everything that I had observed, and nothing is really going on. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden it gets really, really cold. It was if this just piercing cold had come out of nowhere and was just filling the entire mobile home. And all of a sudden I start to feel like this, like, again, it's kind of like a static electricity type feeling, as if the air itself was charged.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I hear this girl, she's sleeping in another room, and I hear her say, "Rick, they're here." So I get up from where I'm walking and I walk into this room and I start addressing whatever it is that this girl claims to be tormenting her. And I start speaking very harshly to it. I want it to show itself. I was doing that provoking thing long before it became trendy. And
long before we learned to not do that.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah, now you know not to do this kind of stuff. And I'm standing there and I'm addressing this thing harshly, and then all of a sudden it appears right in front of me. It was just like, it was this big black form. Now, whether or not it actually physically pushed me or it startled me and I fell backwards, but all of a sudden I'm sitting on my ass looking up at this thing. And I get the feeling that it's just looking down at me, and it laughs. I hear this laughter, and then it just disappears. Now, you know, I've told this story to other people, and of course, the thing that they come to right away is, "Oh my God, you dealt with a demon." But I'm like, wait a second. I'm going to stop you right there. Okay. In my 27 years or so of hunting ghosts, I have never once come across a demon. I don't even know if I believe that they exist. What's that?
Snap. 50 odd years.
Oh, you got.
And I still have not either.
Exactly. So here's my theories about what it is that I had dealt with. Okay. Theory number one. I had experienced what is called a tulpa.
Yeah.
And that is a thought form
Right.
is formed out of sheer will and magic.
Yeah, we've had plenty of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that figures in Tibetan Buddhism, in their folklore. So that is number one. And anyways, this tulpa was created by her boyfriend, fiance, whatever, and it had followed her, and it had, could have attacked me. I'm not saying that it did. Or number two, this girl was a conduit or a focus of recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, a poltergeist, more commonly known as a poltergeist.
Yeah.
And this manifestation of this black form could have been a telepathic or psychological construct that she had worked up in her own mind, and through telepathy was able to put out into the physical environment.
I agree with you, but on both accounts there, that's what it could be.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back on it many, many years later, and I write about it and I go into greater depth and detail in my forthcoming book, Behold Shocking True Tales of Terror, ... and some other spooky stuff, which comes out in December, by the way. And you're going to like this one, Irene. It's actually being published by a publisher in Scotland.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm not being published here in the United States with this book and the book that's coming after that. So I will actually be in the British Library. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that is good.
I'm really happy about that. So looking back on this, and I go into a greater detail in the book that's coming out in December, and go into greater detail on tulpas and, of course, with poltergeists and recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. And I really honestly have to say that it was one of those things, because I don't know. I can't go on record and saying that demons don't exist, because I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater on that, because I don't think we know enough about the spirit realm.
Demon is a human made-up word, let's face it.
It is.
There is something that exists, but what it is exactly, we don't know.
Exactly.
But I don't class them as demons. I don't look on it like the church would or anything like that. You know?
Right.
And tulpas, well, we've had our own share of tulpas, I've got to admit.
Yeah. So, this first investigation really was a baptism by fire. I mean, this was like, I was dealing with, at 17 years old, I was dealing with things that I probably should have waited a few more years to deal with, but it only sparked my interest in learning more about psychic ability, going beyond just ghosts and hauntings, learning about psychic ability, learning about the poltergeist. Poltergeist is something that I am actually so much more interested in researching than I am in researching ghosts and hauntings. And if there's any truth to it that this is actually out of control psychic ability, then this just puts it on the potential that mankind has to have these kind of abilities and to affect the physical environment with them.
You and I are of like mind there, because it's one of the things that fascinates me almost more than the ghosts and disembodied spirits is what we as human beings are really capable of. I'm of the belief that a long time ago, our history is not what we know it is. I have belief that, a long time ago, we were much more in touch with these types of forces, these types of abilities that we've lost. They've been programmed out of us, or for whatever reason, we've forgotten how to use them. And now, it still shows up in people. And we all have that latent ability. We all have that bit of, I never claimed to be a psychic, but, with enough training and with enough, experience, you learn to understand those signals your body is giving you. When you feel something in a room and you feel that there's a presence, a thought appears in your head. And there are those people who are strong enough their energy can affect the physical environment.
Well,
Go ahead.
Mark, I was just going to say, here's what I find interesting about psychic ability, because I get people asking me all the time. And a lot of my friends and family and acquaintances and associates, they know my interests. So they're asking me, Rick, is everybody psychic? And I say to a greater or lesser degree. The lesser degree being situational awareness. This is something that we all have. Unfortunately, I do believe it might be being bred out of us within the next 100 years or so. We may not have this anymore. But it goes back to the time when humans, the early man, when we were, nothing more than hunter-gatherers. When we were hunter-gatherers a lot longer than we are, what we are today. And back then, you had to be completely aware of your surroundings. Otherwise, you're going to wind up being on some other highly specialized predator's dinner plate. So we had to be aware of every single change in what was going on around us. And we all have that. It's all part of human evolution. We've had it since we, dropped the tails and the fur and fell from the trees. But, as far as things like mediumship or clairvoyance or even ESP, this is something different. This is something that is not part of human evolution. However, I do believe that there may be something in our DNA, something that is either chemical or biological, because every single psychic you ever meet, and now I've met dozens of them, but I can probably count on one hand how many people I really
you've met dozens of those who claim they're psychic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they exactly, that claim that they're psychic. Either they're hoaxers, but most of the part they're well-meaning people who have deluded themselves in one way or another. But this handful of people, they all say the same thing, that it's not just me. I come from a long line of people that have these abilities. And it has really honestly got me wondering, is there something in our DNA? Is there something that is biological or chemical that makes these specialized psychic abilities part of who you are as a person? And, the jury is still out on the subject for me, but I'm not going to throw away, the theorizing that, yeah, it's possible that these kind of specialized psychic abilities is something that is inherited, and it is something that is in the DNA of certain families. Irene, you yourself are psychic, correct?
Who, me?
Yes.
Wow.
You just opened a can of worms there, Rick.
Yeah. It's a word I don't like to use, really. I don't class myself as a medium or anything like that.
We came up with a term for Irene. It's called an extrasensor. Nobody knows what the hell it means, but it perfectly fits what she's able to do.
I sense things a bit extra.
That's perfectly fine. That's totally reasonable. But is anybody else in your family? Does anybody else have these abilities?
Yeah, my father was like it, and one of my sons, and I suspect a couple of my grandchildren.
Right. One of the theories that I like, that there is 98% of our DNA that is called non-coding DNA.
That's right.
Okay, or they call it junk DNA. And we only actually use 2%. That 2% is what makes us who we are. But we have this other 98% over here that's just they're drinking beers or whatever. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I do theorize that the seat of psychic ability is or will one day be found in this junk or non-coding DNA, this 98%. And I wrote an article for the Supernatural magazine called Junk DNA and the Psychic in You, that goes into greater detail in this. And I honestly do believe that if there is a biochemical component to psychic ability, you're going to find it in this junk or non-coding DNA.
That's interesting.
And here's something. I have always heard that statistic, the fact with junk DNA and how little of our DNA we're using, just like how little percentage of our brains we're using. But have they ever figured out, can the same be said for other species on the planet, other species of mammals in particular? Do they have the same situation where their DNA has a lot of junk DNA in it as well? Is that a normal...
I think so.
Is that just a normal condition of the planet?
They use a lot more psychic abilities than we do, animals.
Well, yes, but what I'm saying is, are humans unique in that category or not? And
one of the things that they say about junk DNA is that junk DNA was actually used at one time to help us evolve from, being whatever our primate ancestors were into being, the pinnacles of reason and intellectualism that we are today.
I wouldn't call that, after what's been going on the last year and a half, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm being completely facetious with my statement. But they do think that 98% of non-coding or junk DNA had to do with our evolution, and we just don't use it anymore. Well, that kind of sounds like that they're not looking into or not putting enough effort into really looking at this non-coding DNA. And I really do believe that if they look at this non-coding DNA and somehow learn to activate it, well, they're going to come across all sorts of things that is just going to make us more human than human.
Rick, it's a really fascinating theory And there's a lot of parts of it that I really agree with you on. The only other aspect to that is, and let me ask your opinion on this, because I'd like to get a better understanding of where you're coming from. You know, all that being said, the biology aspect as us here as physical beings, what is your thoughts then on actual human spirits or survival beyond this life?
I think that consciousness is something that, wait a minute, how am I trying to put this? Consciousness is, obviously, it is a part of us, the mind. The brain is different from the mind, or the nous, as the ancient Greeks called it, the mind. And this mind is part of a greater cosmic mind. And it is what gives us consciousness. It is what I believe causes us to have spirit, soul, if you want to use a religious term. This great cosmic consciousness that one day we eventually go back to. And I believe that this is something that makes us human. I know this is sounding really, really new agey, and I apologize for that, because I'm not by any means a new agey kind of person. But I think that all humans are part of this great cosmic consciousness, and this is what gives us reason. This is what gives us our soul. This is what makes us different in, many respects from, animals. Now, this is just my thinking, and I could be wrong. And, the thing is like, I am absolutely willing to accept the fact that accept the possibility that I may be wrong.
Well, if you're wrong, then we're all wrong.
Yep.
Me and Mark are wrong as well, then.
Because we're right there with you, Rick. You're actually explaining it in slightly different terms, but the concept is there, and we're right there with you.
Okay, good. I didn't want to come off sounding like I was being super new agey or anything like that. But it's just a theory on consciousness, what makes us human, and what happens to us when we die. But that is like the great unknown, isn't it? When I was last year in 2016, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called synovial cell sarcoma, and and I'm sure you guys are probably looking at my Facebook picture and wondering, it's like, hey, where did that guy's left leg go? I lost my left leg to it, and I'm completely mobile, and everything is fine now. But I had all of my experiences in life to fall back on, because of course, everybody thinks that you get cancer, it's a death sentence. Thankfully, it's not so much a death sentence anymore, because they can treat it. But I was lucky to have 30 some odd years to fall back on, to say, you know what, there is more out there. There is more to me than just flesh and blood. And one of these days I will go back to being part of the universe, part of this greater cosmic mind, or I will be a spirit. And so I had all of that to give me comfort. I had all of that to fall back on. And, it's really weird that when you have a brush with death like that, it really does fundamentally change the way you think of things.
I bet it does. And I couldn't imagine what it was like being in your shoes, to have to go through that and that situation. And when I did see the picture, and I'm he's got a bionic upgrade. Cool.
It's so funny.
Transhumanism,
He saw it. I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it until he told me.
I walked past a bunch of preschoolers one day, and one of the kids go, "Oh my God, look at that guy's weird leg!" And another kid yells out, "That's not a weird leg. That's a robot leg." And it was so funny and so cute, And
my best friend from elementary school, he recently had to have his leg amputated due to severe diabetes. So he got a similar leg like yours, and he was telling us that he was going to get one with that had a clear empty spot in from the attachment that comes down, and he was going to fill it with water and put a goldfish in there.
Oh,
yeah, I'd actually thought about that too.
that's a poor goldfish.
But I think the point that I was trying to make with it, like I said, is I had many years to follow of personal experiences, knowing, and I'm not going to have anybody say to me, Rick, what you saw you didn't really see, or what you've seen on your investigations, or what you experienced you didn't really experience. And it's like, dude, you weren't there.
Exactly.
That's it. Nobody's got a right to say that. Nobody can say that. Nobody can say that about me either. Right. I know what I saw, and that's it.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the problem. So people like pride themselves on being skeptics these days. And you know what? It's one thing to have an open mind and have a mind be so open that your brains fall out. But at the same time, being overly skeptic that, well, that's just somebody's personal experience and opinion. That's not evidence. It's like, I think that's really damn good evidence. If you're able to, again, every story and perspective is going to be told from the perspective of the person who experienced it. They'll have their own biases possibly that comes in on it. Yes, it's human nature. Sure. But still, if they are somebody who can clearly state the facts of what they experienced, why would you doubt it as a skeptic trying to explain it away? Because most skeptics use their skepticism as a crutch when they just don't want to accept the fact that the world is a hell of a lot stranger than we realize, or that we're being told that it is.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things that really bugs me that people say. They say that, well, the personal experience is not as important as getting hard evidence. Well, it's like, really, dude? If the personal experience isn't so important, why do you investigate this stuff anyways? Because it is the personal experience that sparks that interest, that sparks that desire to learn more, that sparks that desire to search deeper into the subject. And I would argue that the personal experience is the most important thing.
And what people also they don't understand is, I don't care what you pull up in terms of hard evidence, okay? It's never going to satisfy the scientific community, because we are not scientists. We're not PhDs performing work in a laboratory under controlled conditions. We can't do it with this type of phenomenon. And modern science does not want to acknowledge the existence of anything that they can't bring into a lab and study under a microscope. Or if they have the math and they have their theoretical, calculations, if the math doesn't add up for them, they dismiss it. Even though the fact that, we're in the 21st century now. I'm still waiting for my frickin' flying cars, but we're in the 21st century and we think we're at the pinnacle of human knowledge and expansion. And the fact is, we still don't know shit. We think we know it all, and we don't. So we think if we can't take something and bring it into the lab, it doesn't exist, or it's not real, or it's not worth understanding. Bullshit. There is so much that is going on that people experience every single day. If they took the time to look into it and stop being so damn skeptical, they might actually start seeing this stuff for themselves, having their own experiences.
Right. And, and I really honestly, I do believe that there are mainstream scientists that do have spiritual beliefs, and they do have beliefs in this kind of thing, but they are so terrified because if they say that, oh yeah, I believe that ghosts, using the term ghosts exist, they're going to be laughed out of their position by their colleagues, and they're going to lose all their grant money, and then they're just going to be blacklisted forever and never be able to work again in their line of scientific inquiry, research, whatever.
They won't get the funding.
Exactly. And that is so tragic.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the problem with knowledge these days. Knowledge is funded, and whoever has the funding controls the knowledge, or controls what it is that the knowledge we seek. And that in itself is a shame.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. You know, for example, it's like with the whole, alien thing. Now, I'm not a ufologist by any stretch of the imagination, but, I've, spoken to people who are involved in mainstream science. It's not that they don't believe that life exists elsewhere in the universe, because that is a statistical certainty that there is, but they're skeptical on whether or not they can actually make it here, that cover the vast distances, and in physics as we know it, to get from their world to our world. But that is physics as we know it. They may have discovered a way to make that, to cover those vast distances between their world and our world. Wormholes, black holes, whatever. Excuse me. And but it's just, they act as if having an open mind is somehow going to kill mainstream science. I think that the whole idea behind science is to make discoveries, to keep an open mind, to explore those things that are previously unknown, because we all know what we know now as chemistry 400 years ago was alchemy. So magic then is now science now. And maybe, maybe it's going to take a couple more centuries, decades, centuries, whatever, for science to come along and say, hey, you know what? Spirits do exist. Mankind has a soul. And, we move on after this existence, one way or the other.
One of the things that I have learned in this past year is, I've mentioned it before on the show, is that I underwent some training, learning to be a shamanic practitioner. Now that sounds really out there for a lot of people, but in the work that I did over the last year, the thing that you learn is it's such a natural, I don't want to call it an ability, it's a natural process. And one of the things that we as a modern Western society have done is we belittled or diminished the contributions that a lot of the more aboriginal native societies around this planet were in tune with certain forces, first certain elements that we laugh off as being, it's poo-poo, it's crap, we have science now. And yet you can go to Aboriginal cultures in Native America, in Australia, in the Himalayas, different types of people who are able to work with, for lack of a better term, spiritual energies or other types of energies, intelligences, in order to affect things in this physical environment, which includes healing people, right, and dealing and also opening up more to certain consciousnesses and realities that are around us. There's an aspect to it that, of shamanic journeying, and they talk about, shamanic journeying to like the upper, middle, or lower worlds. Now, I look at all of that as a metaphor, that to make it easier to understand, metaphor of reaching certain levels of vibrational consciousness, in which case you can access, as you calls it, in the cosmic consciousness, access those points within the cosmic consciousness to bring in either the information or bring in the energy that is needed in order to affect something here in this physical environment. Right. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like we've gone backwards in our advancement, and we need to be a little bit more open or study further some of the things that we used to be when we were a more primitive society, or more in touch, I should say, not primitive, but more in touch with the natural elements of this world and our reality.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. But, again, it's one of those things that it's like, well, this comes off as being super new agey. Therefore, it has no value to science at all.
Right.
Yeah, that's so, that's just bunk, man. That's the best way that I could possibly put it. And it's just doing such a huge disservice to the rest of us. This unwillingness to explore this spirituality. It's not helping.
Don't rock the boat. That's what it boils down to.
Rick, can we get back to your black mass shadow?
Sure. It's really funny because, we were talking about this. I just, wanted to kind of like bring other people in. When you said that we were talking about my black mass, when we went to break, I'm like, I don't celebrate the black mass.
Okay, we'll call it this black shadow, this black mass type shadow. What happened in the end? So what happened? What happened after you were on the floor and you felt that it was laughing at you?
Well, by then dawn was, quickly approaching. And, I just talked to this girl a little bit more to find out a little bit more about her background, and what it is that she had planned on doing once she, went back home. And she just was not very forthcoming with a lot of information. And after that night, I think I had left the house about 6 o'clock in the morning and, went home and got a good amount of sleep. And I never heard from the girl ever again.
No? Oh.
No. She had actually run away. And, so, I don't know if she went back home to where she had come from or, what had happened. It was just sort of one of those situations where I did what I could to help.
Yeah.
And sometimes
I hope that I was able.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you can do. We've been in that, as investigators, we've been in that situation numerous times where you just can't help anymore. And a lot of those times, at least from my experience, you're dealing with people who don't want to accept what they're dealing with. They have an idea and they don't want to change what it is, and they don't want to change the behavior that's possibly causing what's going on there. We'd mentioned this case before, and you'd mentioned before about a poltergeist case fascinating you and tulpas, and we dealt with a case where we had this young woman who kept saying that she was being tormented by ghosts and spirits in her apartment. Long story short, because our listeners have heard this before, through a lot of investigation and us working with her, we were able to find out that it was her. And it was not only her, just in her head, she was manifesting these things. If somebody gave her a suggestion, she would manifest that suggestion. Somebody told her that, there were witches that used to practice in her basement, even though she didn't have a basement. And then she suddenly would see an old hag, witch-like figure taunting her on the stairs. It was her own energy that was creating these thought forms and manifesting them, not only for her to see, but other people would see as well.
Yeah, one of the most famous poltergeist cases comes from the United Kingdom, what is called the Black Monk of
Pontefract.
Yeah, it is. You know what?
They have not ever, as far as I know, they don't know. There was no Black Monk of Pontefract. He wasn't anywhere near that house. There's all these sort of things,
Right.
It's one of the most important ones, one of the biggest ones over here was the Enfield one.
Right. And I was actually going...
Borley Wood.
I'm sorry, what again?
Borley was another big one.
Borley Rectory.
Borley Rectory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your point, Rick, about?
What I was going to talk about with how you talk about manifesting and this girl manifesting this black mass. You get a lot of cases. The black monk being one of them, or the haunting at Borley or the haunting at Enfield. One of the things that I always kind of wondered about poltergeist is that the energy that is put out there in the physical environment by the poltergeist focus, or the focus of the recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. You get these rare poltergeist cases where spirits do show themselves. And it was this case that I had dealt with that convinced me of this, that the focus can manifest these, they can either manifest these spirits telepathically, or the power is so great that it can draw in transient spirits. And that's one of the fascinating things that I've always thought, concerning poltergeist cases, such as the case of Enfield or the Black Monk or, Borley, that this was actual just poltergeist manifestations to start off with, and then spirits come into it either as a telepathic projection or giving something life, or fueling something that already exists there, or draining it. That was always kind of a thought that I had concerning poltergeist cases.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, because
it's like they're being drawn to it.
Well, some types of activity can attract other types of activity, and you could be dealing with a case where you're dealing with more than one type of phenomenon.
Right.
Everything from a residual type of haunting, or that replay type of haunting that's not intelligent, to an intelligent and haunting, to even somebody there developing some type of psychokinesis and affecting the environment.
Right.
And that's the types of thing people have to keep in mind when they do these investigations, is to gather as much information as possible about the case, about the people. And, sometimes, when with our group Spirit Rescue International, when we do, we start a case, we have a very detailed questionnaire that we ask them to fill out to be as honest as possible. And this would include anything from, medical issues to if was there drug use, was there any other types of things that could possibly have an effect. And sometimes people won't fill that out, or they don't want to be honest about it. And then you find that out later during the investigation. So it's really important, again, to gather as much information as possible going in, and then compare the phenomenon, what you're experiencing, to what you've been told, because sometimes they don't add up, and you have to realize you've got some missing information there.
Right.
With the Black Monk of Pontefract, as far as I know, there was no monk, or that it's more legend than anything. But I wouldn't be surprised one day whether to see a black monk wander through there with all the people's, what you're saying, The
manifesting.
Yeah,
something.
Manifesting it.
Like
yeah.
That. Absolutely. A really interesting poltergeist case that I had dealt with about 5 or 6 years ago. I never even actually had to go to these people's house, but the story in and of itself is very interesting. A psychic friend of mine, her name is Nancy Laporta. She had brought this to my attention, and she gave me the phone number of this woman to call. Now, this woman had been experiencing some very intense activity in her home. She had things that were flying around the house, and like winds, this really violent wind that would fly in the house, and things would shake on the walls and things would fly off the walls. And she had a paranormal investigation group come into her home to do an investigation. Now, it was just this woman and her daughter, who was severely autistic.
Yeah.
And this group had come into her home, and after doing the investigation, they told her that your house is infested with demons.
Oh.
Okay, now it gets better.
If you hear some noise, it's just me banging my head against the wall. But continue.
Oh, that's fine. Okay. So, yeah. So they told this poor woman that your house is infested with demons, and your daughter, who is a special needs individual, they told her that her daughter was possessed by the devil.
Oh, sugar plum fairies! You're joking.
No, I'm not joking.
Shut
I wish
the front door.
I had never been so angry.
I would be
my
too.
Entire life to hear this poor lady. Now, the reason that this lady was in the situation that she was in, she had just got a divorce from her alcoholic, abusive husband. Yeah. So she was on her own, taking care of this daughter who was severely autistic and apparently possessed by demons. And so she had no job, but she had enough money that she had saved and that she was able to get this house. So I spoke with this lady on the phone, and I told her, I said, I don't believe that you have demons in your home. I don't believe that your autistic daughter is demon possessed. I think what you have going on in your house, I think that you have what is called recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis or poltergeist phenomena. Yeah. And, she didn't know what I was talking about. So, of course, I had to explain it to her at the best that I, possibly could. And she asked me, she said, what is this thing? And how is it that is this a ghost? I said, no. What's happening is somebody in your house, and I do believe that it was her, that she was manifesting this out of control psychic ability because she was underneath an extreme amount of stress.
Yeah.
She just got out of a horrible marriage. She's alone for the first time in her life, and she has her daughter that is autistic. And she was, and I told her, I said, it is nothing that you have done wrong. It's just that you are manifesting this energy that has come out of you and pushed itself out into the physical environment and is causing these this activity to happen in your home. And she's like, well, if I have this problem, how is it that I can, how do I get rid of it? And I remembered back to the parapsychologist, Nandor Fodor, who had dealt with this. He told people who are experiencing recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, go talk to a psychologist, talk to a licensed clinical social worker, somebody that you can get your feelings out because you are keeping them bottled up and they are exploding inside of you and manifesting as this amazing psychic energy in your home. Now, guys, this is not hyperbole, and I'm not bullshitting you here. She did go talk to somebody. Within 2 weeks of her talking to somebody and getting all of this stuff out of her, she found a job. She was able to take care of her daughter more effectively, and the activity that was happening in her house stopped. Within 2 weeks of her talking to this licensed clinical social worker, she had gotten all this energy out just by talking to somebody, and she had not had a problem since.
Oh, that's great. That's a nice ending.
Yeah,
that is good.
It is. It is one of those happier endings, and I'm not going to tell you the name of this group. I know the name of this group, and it's a really just stupid name. And they had unnecessarily scared this woman because everything that they had learned, they had seen on a goddamn television show.
Exactly. Exactly. And, we've dealt with cases like that. There was a recent case where I was dealing with where this woman was saying that she had another group come in, and a psychic in the group said that she had 70 portals in her house. It's like
70 portals.
70 portals.
Yeah,
I mean,
for For a normal sized house, that's good going.
Yeah, that's a pretty good, amount of portals coming in.
I'm surprised it didn't disappear up its own portal.
She should have had like a street light, to help direct traffic of all the spirits coming through. But it's this type of thing that where these other groups and people go out and make it so much harder for the rest of us to come in, right. We wind up half the time cleaning up somebody else's mess.
And I've had to do that a couple times.
Yeah, and some of these other groups, and again, I'm not going to go on a group bashing rant here, but
no,
it's just there's too many people out there who don't know what they're doing, watch one too many television shows. I mean, I'm guilty. I watch the television shows. Ghost Adventures is my guilty pleasure. I watch the show. Them. I watch it every week. I love it because, I look at it as an example of what not to do.
Well, I never ever watch them. They just make me laugh.
Oh yeah,
I tried and
yeah, it's.
I either end up having an argument with the television or I'm rolling on the floor laughing. So,
see, but now here's the thing with the television shows. Okay, I know that you could go on this humongous tirade of how much you hate the television shows. I don't watch them. I don't really watch a lot of television unless there's, like talking animals or something, because my kid watches a lot of, cartoons or whatever. So I really don't watch a lot of television. But if there is anything that these shows have done, that they have brought awareness.
Oh, exactly. They have.
To investigation and research of the paranormal. For better or worse, depending on your point of view.
Exactly.
I hate to sound like, Ben Kenobi about it there, but it's depending on a certain point of view. Now, when Ghost Hunters first came on, when that came on in 2004, man, I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Ghost Adventures came on, take it or leave it, whatever. I watch it for a laugh every once in a while. But here's the thing. These shows are for entertainment purposes only. Yeah. They are not meant to be used as teaching tools to go out in the world and spread, misinformation or whatever. They're television shows. It's entertainment. And I think that there needs to be like that disconnect in the paranormal field, because I cannot tell you how many investigations I've gone on where the client has said to me, don't use swear words in our house, which is, okay, I do have a mouth like a shipwrecked sailor, but when I'm on an investigation, it's all professionalism, man.
Yeah.
Or don't provoke our spirits. Well, where do they hear that kind of thing from?
Yeah. Yep. And just to kind of reiterate, I agree with you 100%. It's been a mixed blessing, a double-edged sword. Ghost Hunters put the paranormal on the map, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. I'm friends with, and I know many of the cast members and former cast members, and that's the thing people need to understand. It's television. And it's producers in the background trying to create a show that people will want to watch. Real paranormal investigation, as I've said a million times, is as boring as whale shit and takes a long time. And it takes forever to, and you don't always have an answer, especially not an answer in, one night's investigation or 20 minutes in the Ghost Hunters case, 23 minutes of screen time.
But Mark, look what we had over here. We had one, Most Haunted. And the only thing you ever learned from Most Haunted is how to scream.
Well, and how to fake things, too.
Okay,
or throw stones.
Yeah, throw stones.
Yeah.
Watch Carl get pulled up the rope, up the stairs. Yeah, or the ghost walking down the corridor that everybody went nuts for except you could tell it's Stuart. So same jacket and everything. But yeah, it's.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and again, having had my own experience with Paranormal State, and the fiasco that was. of, you know, how they came in, how they treated the clients, how they manipulated the evidence and manipulated timelines and did all this stuff, because in the end, they don't give a shit about you, your clients, your ghosts. They want compelling television, and they'll do whatever.
Is that the one that was snorting in the bathroom?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was the.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, my client caught him blowing coke in the bathroom. So.
oh boy.
Yes, you know, and not to mention the things that they faked and things that they messed around with, and you know, it was an eye-opening experience. Let me tell you that. And people, so many people get into this field for the wrong reasons, because they want to be famous, they want to get their own TV shows. You know, the TV shows are starting to die out now. Thank goodness, because it was the oversaturation in the market. There's no new ideas, because the producers of these shows don't want new ideas. They want tried and true scares. And you know, it's probably a good thing, but you're right. In the end, it did spark awareness. People are more aware of it. They're aware of terminologies. You can mention the word EVP to people, and people go, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that." You know, where a decade ago, nobody knew what that meant.
Yeah, exactly. But now, you know, going back to Most Haunted, I will admit, I like Most Haunted only because now allow me to explain myself. We don't get too many 500-year-old castles here in Chicago, Illinois, and I've never.
The locations are brilliant. The locations are brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. I've never been to England. It is my absolute dream since I was a child to go to Great Britain, but and that's, you know, that's the only reason why I would ever watch the show, because, you know, damn, some of those places are really awesome. But, you know, it's like, you know, Mark and Irene, I've had people ask me that, would you ever be interested in doing a television show?
Yeah.
And, you know, I would say nothing's off the table. Absolutely not. But man, this has got to be done in such a way that not only does it bring enlightenment and education, but it also presents the field in a compelling and respectful way. And you're not going to get that on, you know, like the Sci-Fi Channel or, you know, Destination America, which is now your one-stop channel for all things paranormal. Luckily, I don't get that channel on my cable.
Now, don't make fun of my mountain monsters.
Oh my God! When I was going through chemotherapy, we happened upon mountain monsters when I was in the hospital, and I tell you what, it only made going through the chemotherapy so much better, because that show was so hilarious. You talk about that there's some bitch, we got to get that, and it's like I have family. My family, my ancestral home is Huntsville, Alabama. My family was one of the founding families of the state of Alabama, and it's like, man, I'm just watching these shows, and I swear to God, it is like watching my cousins.
Well, you know, it hits a little too close to home to me, because my mother's side of the family are all West Virginia Hoopies.
Oh yeah,
and you know
so it's like
they're all based out there out of West Virginia, and but that show is such a, I watch and laugh my ass off at these guys when they jump into the side by sides, they're hooping and hollering as they're going through the woods. It's you know, if there's a monster out there, they've scared it away like 10 miles back.
Yeah, I like the one where they were talking about how the devil dog was in cahoots with Bigfoot, and how the devil dog was able to help the Bigfoot escape from whatever hell it is trap that they were using to get it. And it was the funniest damn thing I have ever seen. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, but here's the problem. There are going to be people that take that seriously and think that this is anything but a joke.
Yep. You know, I love the show. God, I wish it comes back. I'm hoping it comes back. I think it's done. It's toast. It's been like 2 years since it was last on. I don't think they're going to continue it. But, you know, that was one of the... I so look forward to that show coming on whenever it came back, just because it is so freaking entertaining.
Oh yeah, it really was.
You know, so you know, TV shows again, double-edged sword, and trying to get pinhead producers who I've dealt with, you know, to understand what makes a good show. And again, you're dealing with, you know, mental midgets in the entertainment field, because that's why so much crap television is produced. It's like, hey, let's make another paranormal show and let's add a little hook. Let's get it all with little people. You know, little people investigating the paranormal. That'll be the next great paranormal show. Yes.
I might actually watch that.
You know, and I don't want to put down some of the people like there's Ghost Brothers. I like the Ghost Brothers guys. Those guys are a hoot. They're very entertaining to watch. But it was painfully obvious that they literally hired these guys who had never investigated a day in their life, handed them a couple cameras, and said, "Here, go investigate. We'll film you." And that's all that they did. And, you know,
cool.
And they only knew what they knew of, you know, watching whatever other shows. Because they had no investigative skills whatsoever. But, you know, hey, they're great guys, and they're very entertaining to watch. But, you know, that's the state of paranormal shows these days. Oh, well, anyway, getting off of that subject, let's get back to real cases. Real cases in the paranormal. I mean, what would you say was one of the most intense, other than that very first one, which is very intense in and of itself, one of the more intense or fascinating cases that you got to work on?
Well, I was part of a much larger group a few years back in I think it was between 2008 and 2011 with the McHenry County Paranormal Research Group, and we investigated this house in it was Waukegan, Illinois, which is really close up near the Wisconsin border. It's north of where I live, and this family had said that they had multiple spirits in their home. They believed that there could have been upwards anywhere of 100 spirits in their home. And they all seemed to be focused on the family matriarch. She was like this 95-year-old woman. This is another one that I talk about in my book. It's called it's called The House of 100 Spirits. And I'm not going to go on record and say there were 100 spirits in this home, but this was absolutely hands down one of the most active homes that I had ever been in my entire career as a paranormal investigator. And we had a plethora of activity, things being moved. I myself had seen a spirit. We were standing in the kitchen, and it very much reminded me of my very first experience with Mrs. McNett. And that's why this will stay with me forever. We're standing in the kitchen and we're talking to the mother. She's, 90 some odd year old woman. And I'm looking down the hall, and there's a bedroom to the left and there's a dining room to the right. And I'm looking down this hall, and out of nowhere, this tall, blonde-haired woman wearing all white clothes just appeared. Like she was just there. That is the best way that I could possibly put it. And an important thing to keep in mind about this family, this was an Armenian family, so they had olive-colored skin and very dark features. And we had nobody in our group that looked like this tall, blonde-haired woman that was part of our group. So I watched this as if she just appears. And I watch her walk up the hall, and she took a left into this bedroom. And I said to my colleagues, I'm like, did you just see that? And I'm like, you know what? I don't care how long you are involved in this field. When you see a full-bodied apparition, you're excited as hell, And I took one of the other investigators, her name was Vicky, and she was actually sensitive, and we hauled ass into this bedroom. And we get into this bedroom, and I'm not kidding you, it is like the size of a jail cell. The only people in this room was the client's daughter, She was a 13-year-old girl. She was maybe all of 5 feet tall. And her friend, who was African American. There was no tall, blonde-haired woman dressed in white in this room, and nowhere for a tall, blonde-haired woman dressed in white to hide. We ran into this room, Vicky and I, and we were like, did you see the woman that just walked in your room? And they look up at us. They were sitting on the floor listening to music, and they look at us and they're like, there is nobody in this room but ourselves. Vicky and I, we looked over this room, under the bed, in the closet. We looked everywhere. There was no place for this woman to possibly hide. And there was no way that these two girls could have faked this. So Vicky and I were standing in this bedroom, and then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this figure go running through the dining hall. I mean, not dining hall, dining room. And again, this figure is gone. Now, the next day after we're doing this was another amazing part of this investigation. We're going over all the EVPs, and right after this happens, Vicky and I, we go into the front room and we're asking questions and doing an EVP session. And I say, the person in this house believes that there is a portal, and this is how these spirits are coming into the house. And on this EVP, you distinctly hear a female voice say, they want us to come in through the window.
Huh,
exactly. This was quite possibly the greatest investigation that I had ever been a part of. I saw things in that house that still send chills down my spine, and I heard things in that house, experienced things in that house. There was to end the investigation, I put my head up into they had an attic, and I climbed up on a ladder and put my head in, and while I'm looking around in this dark attic, all of a sudden I hear what sounds like somebody running at me. And I actually fell off the ladder because I thought something was coming at me. And this was just the greatest investigation that I had ever been a part of.
Whatever happened to that location? Was there any resolution, or, how the people still experiencing things? What's going on at this time, or do you even know?
I don't know, but what I do know is that the old lady had passed about 2 years after we had done the investigation. And her husband and the kids, they moved to a house, I want to say in Lake Villa, Illinois. And that's the most that I know. I don't know if whoever is living in this house now, because obviously this is like a private home and nobody's going to come and just say to you, unless they seek you out, my house is haunted.
Exactly.
So I don't know, what happened with this house or with the people that are currently living in it. But I will say this was the absolute most active house that I'd ever been in. And I specialize and do primarily private homes. I don't like doing what I call big box haunts, these places that people will, do the pay to play. I don't believe in doing that. I think that's ridiculous. But this was by far the most active home I'd ever been in.
First of all, I'm going to say I'm very jealous that you've been able to see multiple apparitions in your experience as an investigator. I've never seen any, and never really seen anything with the naked eye. However, I have had that experience once where you feel like something is rushing up on you. I've had that experience. I've heard footsteps coming up behind me, and in a jail cell once, I was sitting outside of an old jail, and I could even hear the quality of the sound. It sounded like rubber-soled shoes on concrete, grinding a little bit in the sand as it walks up. I mean, that's how clear It is. I've heard my
And that
name.
is a distinctive sound.
Yes, it is. I've heard my name being called. I've had so many different experiences, but I've not had the holy grail of seeing an apparition. Now, but there's so many other types of activity that do happen, and I've had a couple of cases very similar to what you've described, which I call paranormal hotspots, where for whatever reason, a certain location will just have an enormous amount of activity.
Yeah.
It doesn't always stay that way, though. Sometimes it changes over time. We had this one location here in North Jersey. There was an old house built back in the late 1700s and was being used as a business. And we investigated that several times. In fact, we used it. It was always such a good location. We used it as a training ground for training investigators because we would always encounter so much activity. But over time, the activity started to diminish. And the last couple times we were there, nothing really happened. But man, the first time we were there, you could actually feel when something entered a room. It was a 4-story house. I mean, it was a 3 stories with a basement. We had people on each floor. And all of a sudden, I'd be in one room, and all of a sudden, you just feel the energy change, and you knew that something was in the room with you.
And that's a situational awareness we all have.
Yep. And then all of a sudden, but you don't normally feel that very often in investigations, but this was so strong, we all felt it. And then all of a sudden it would go away. And then somebody else in the team would report, yeah, it just came I'm up in the attic and it just showed up here. And we could track its movements around the house. It would leave a location and appear somewhere else. And it was going through checking us out. So that in itself was really unique. And there was another location we had where, and I wanted to ask your opinion on this too. Now, do you feel that there are certain locations that, have you ever experienced what you would consider to be a natural type of or an elemental type of entity in a case? Attached to a location?
An elemental, you mean like as an inhuman kind of entity?
Yes.
Oh, boy. There was one, and it was in another, it's going to be featured in my book. In McHenry, Illinois, it was when I was with the McHenry County Paranormal Research Group. We had a boy who was being brutally picked on by his classmates, and he had done a blood ritual to try and he killed an animal. We actually had to report him, and we had to report him to the authorities for it after we found out that it happened. And he had done a blood ritual. He sacrificed a cat to like I said, we reported him, and you did it to summon something because he wanted to gain revenge. And even to this day, I don't know what this thing was. Was it a human spirit that may have been, trying to terrify this family or, being used by this young man? Or was it something like an elemental type spirit? Man, I do not know to this day what the hell it was that we dealt with. But whatever it was not friendly.
We had a similar case I've mentioned a few times on the show here in North Jersey where we had a location where it was a residential neighborhood. More than one house in the neighborhood were being affected and having paranormal activity, but we primarily dealt with 2 of the houses that were across the street from each other. They were the only ones that were really open to it and was willing to talk. And the more we investigated, and over time, we just started to realize that it's something attached to the land. There's something else there. Very intelligent, mischievous, could be malevolent at times. Was it evil? I don't necessarily think so. I'm like you. I don't subscribe to the demon theory, but it was definitely felt like a non-human intelligence that was tormenting definitely one of the families, broke up the marriage in another family. And you're also dealing with, again, there's also multiple types of activity going on, more than just one entity being sighted, more than one types of experience. We recorded multiple Class A EVPs in this location, sometimes answering questions. In some cases, seemed to be answering questions just before they were asked, which I find very interesting.
Shows psychic ability, but sure.
And there was definite historical activity of Native American activity on the land. In fact, there was a burial when one of the houses was built in 1910, I believe. They found human remains on the property, and they were determined to be Native American. And I think the Museum of History came in and removed it, but when we were doing the investigation, because they found a burial, a ground-penetrating radar team was brought in, and we found what seems to be maybe several more burials still there, and a big circular structure underground. So, unfortunately, the client was so scared by everything, because everything scared her, that she wouldn't dig down. We couldn't excavate more. There wasn't much more we could do to find it, but there was just so much evidence that what we were dealing with was predated everything that was going on in this location, where people were living, at least the white people were living, and was possibly attached to the land itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, no. So it's just that type of that is something, again, more lately than before, is where I lean towards in some cases, when dealing with certain types of activity, right away with ruling out a spirit of a person who's died and doesn't know they died, or doesn't want to leave, or whatnot in a house. There's these other things that we could be dealing with, and certainly in cases where you're dealing with something possibly that is acting negatively, you could still be dealing with a human spirit, and he's just, let's face it, just because if you're an asshole in life, you're probably going to be an asshole in death too.
That's exactly what I say all the time. And it's like, yeah, if you're a miserable old, to use a term that Irene would use, a miserable old sod, you're going to be a miserable old sod in death, and you're going to be just as mean and nasty. So, but like I said, at the same time, I will not go on record as saying that demons don't exist, because we don't know enough about the spiritual realm to say that they don't exist. But we do know that what we are dealing with more often than not are discarnate, disembodied human spirits.
And that's part of it. There's also some other things that we could be dealing with too. And again, I try to keep that open mind of if we are dealing with something that is involving our lack of understanding on how actual space and time works, multiple realities and dimensions, even parallel realities. We had on Whitley Strieber a few weeks ago, talking with him about his new book, The Afterlife Revolution, and his ongoing contact with his wife, Anne, who had passed away a few years ago. And, opening up that door to a lot of different ideas on how to look at the afterlife, or what happens to somebody when they die, and what it is we could possibly be experiencing. Not always ghosts, but they do exist. I believe that what we would think of as a ghost, and I still hate the terminology, because the terminology, most of this was developed in Victorian times in the spiritualist movement. It's part of our culture. And so when you say the term ghost, everybody automatically jumps to a conclusion on what they think they're dealing with. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I couldn't agree more with you.
Now, are you still actively investigating cases?
You know what? It has been over a year. since I've done anything. Before I think it was a good couple months before I was diagnosed with cancer, and I haven't done anything in over a year. But I am willing and able to get back out there and start hitting it again. But this is what's been great, because in taking this time to heal and to get myself stronger and to get myself better, I was able to finish the book Behold, Shocking True Tales of Terror and some other spooky stuff, which is all about my experiences and all about the things that I've learned along the way as an investigator. And man, I am just about done writing the second book of a year, and we're only in May. Working on it. We're almost done with the third book here. And so I'm really hoping that I can get back out there sooner or later, and because I miss it. It's something that you miss. It's something that is part of me. Maybe it's in my DNA. I don't quite know, but it's what I grew up with. It's what I know. It's what I'm familiar with. So I don't know. We'll see if I get any phone calls or any word of mouth type stuff. Hey, my buddy thinks that his house is haunted, and he wants you to come down and take a look at it. That's usually how it happens.
I'm in the same boat, actually. This last year, things have been fairly quiet. And I've known a lot of people who I respect in the paranormal field. The field has changed. And a lot of people have disassociated themselves with it, or have gotten out of the field in terms of dealing with other groups or the public or the conventions or any of that kind of thing. Because so many of us, I think, have gotten turned off by the direction that the paranormal has gone into. And you know what? I know my own beliefs and how I view a lot of this has changed so radically over the last couple of years that in a way, I take a step back to want to think about it some more, want to look into it some more. And I'm dying to go on some good investigations, but I don't want to go back and do what I used to do. Go in, show up with cameras and, walk around, ask questions. And, some of that is all part of it, but there are different things I want to do and try to have, because I want to come in with a better understanding of what could possibly be going on in a location.
Yeah, I think it's important to try and approach it with a deeper understanding. And and one of the things that I like about this new school way of investigating is the desire to help people. Because let's face it, in the old school model and when psychical research first started out, it wasn't really so much about helping people as it was gathering evidence and trying to experience a phenomena. And I kind of like that. And but I think at the same time too, I think that we do need to get back to that, where we're there to observe, document, and report. And I think that's something that needs to be got back to. And I think that another thing that people need to get out of their brain, to just completely squash it, nuke it out if they have to, I don't know, that this field is not going to make you famous. It may give you some notoriety. It may, some people may know who you are. I still have, I've written 2 books, been in a documentary. I used to host 2 radio shows, and there are still people that say, Rick Hale, who the F is that guy? But it's like, we need to get away from this. There needs to be a disconnect from this whole thing that I'm going to be somebody because of this. No, what we need to have in this field now is we need to have serious-minded people who want to experience a phenomena, help if they can, and then show the world that this is what we have, and just get all that other stuff out of your brain. I think that that's what this field needs.
Absolutely. And, part of the problem is, as long as the field itself and, the television shows, which hopefully most of them start dying down or going away. But, as long as we keep trying to sell it as a fear factor, as as what's spooky, what's creepy. No, it's trying to understand our own existence. It's trying to understand more of our own reality as well.
Exactly.
And
you know what?
That's the approach we need to take.
Yeah. I usually tell people, especially people who are new to this field and think that this is all based on television, I usually tell them, if you are looking for adventure, join the Marines. If you're looking for a thrill, go to a strip club. If you're looking for scary, go to my family's house on Sundays for dinner. That'll scare the hell out of anybody. Okay? This field is to be approached with respect and the most serious of mind, that you are looking for something that doesn't just affect you, but affects us as a species. And I think that that's how people need to approach it.
Plus, there are very real consequences to doing what we do. If you're not prepared, or if you're not in the right proper frame of mind, going into one of these locations, you could open yourself up to either a type of attachment, which can happen, or I think of as a spiritual or psychic leech that can attach itself to you. I can also, like you got knocked on your ass your first time on doing that investigation, and the thing was laughing at you. These things can affect you physically, make you nauseous, make you sick, or whatnot. They can affect the environment, and people don't realize that, you got to be careful with some of this stuff. Be careful on your approach, which is again why I've always so against the taunting and the what's the term? I'm having a brain freeze here. Provoking. Thank you. Because of it's what if you're dealing with somebody who's nice or whatnot, and you're being disrespectful. And then they're not going to want to talk to you to begin with. Right.
Yeah, I think that's where, the importance of research comes in, because if you go to a 150-year-old home and you're speaking to the spirit of a woman from the Victorian era, if you go in there with all guns blazing and you're speaking harshly and using swear words, do you really think that a woman from the Victorian era, where women were raised and bred to be very demure, and do you really honestly think that they're going to want to talk to you? Hell no. Especially if they're, if they're a intelligent conscience, they're not going to talk to you. They're going to completely run away. So it's like, that's why being respectful is so incredibly important when doing an investigation. And not only that too, when you're also going to a place and you're yelling and screaming at something that may or may not even be there, you just look like an asshole, and that is all there is to it.
Yep. And again, you're also in so many cases. I mean, it's one thing for people who want to go to these big famous locations, and I agree with you. Let them go do whatever they want to do, go get their cheap thrill, whatever. And as somebody who's actually gone to some locations like Rolling Hills Asylum in upstate New York, and that place really was off the hook with the activity. It was really cool. But, people also go in there, and a lot of times we are going into people's homes, private homes or businesses. And if you go in, stir things up, and then you get to go home. And then the clients have to sit there. Yep, they got to live there, and they got to deal with the aftermath. And if you go in and stir things up, that's just irresponsible.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, we are coming on to the end of the show here, Rick, and so want to plug your book again, The Geek's Guide to the Strange and Unusual, Poltergeists, Ghosts, and Demons. And where can people find that book?
You can find it at Amazon.com. You could either get it on Kindle, or you could, have the United States Postal Service or whatever country it is that you're in deliver it right to your house. And, please, I advise you to buy it, not only because it is a really well-written book, but I want to send my kid to college one day.
Any little bit helps. Yeah, any little bit helps. And you've got...
Rick, we're going to have you back again, because there was a lot of things I wanted to talk to you about, but didn't get the chance.
Okay.
All right.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me on this time.
Yeah, it's been great.
I'll get back to you and get that booked in.
Well, Rick, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been wonderful talking to you, and we'll definitely, guys. I agree with Irene, we'll definitely have to have you back.
Anytime.
And want to thank everybody for listening to another edition of Paranormal UK Radio here on the Paranormal
UK Radio Network.
Yes. We will catch you all next week, everybody. Have a great evening.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Good night.